So, in tonight's video, we are going to talk about how it's time to fire Jerome Powell. Now, this is something that I find pretty interesting to hear, especially coming from a lot of the mainstream media. The idea of the Federal Reserve needing to get rid of Jerome Powell, that Trump doesn't like Jerome Powell, and that somehow Jerome Powell is going to change the way that things are being done, or at least getting rid of Jerome Powell will change the way that the monetary policy is being conducted. Um, very hard for me to agree with this. Now, it's not that firing Jerome Powell wouldn't be a good thing, like, whether or not we put a different chairman up in there. I'm not trying to say that Jerome Powell is some awesome chairman or that he is super understanding of the situation. None of that stuff, right? I find this hard to understand in the sense that Jerome Powell is a spokesperson. That's it. Like, he is not somebody who is in charge of monetary policy. In fact, he is not even somebody who comes remotely close to being in charge of monetary policy. He has one vote on a group of other members, the Federal Open Market Committee, 12 voting members, 5 alternates, and 2, I'm trying to keep my camera still here, and 2 advisors, right? So now these 19 people who make up the FOMC together formulate monetary policy. These group. And if you fire Jerome Powell, what you will do is you will replace the spokesperson at the Federal Reserve. So when somebody communicates out there about what is going on with monetary policy and they're speaking on the Fed's behalf, that will be the chairman of the Federal Reserve. So if you don't like the messenger, then you shoot the messenger. But you're not going to change the delivery of what it is that's coming because the message is still going to be the same. So now when I think about what it is that Donald Trump is saying now, he wants to fire Jerome Powell, needs to replace him, did a terrible job, doesn't know what he's doing, all this other stuff. I laugh at this thinking, well, what is it that you're expecting to change? Like, what is it that you think is going to actually happen after you fire Jerome Powell and appoint somebody else into that position? Does that change the voting members of the FOMC? Does that make their vote change? Do you think that all of a sudden the strategy is going to change? Any of that stuff is going to make any difference or change any of the difference that is in their minds? No, right? Jerome Powell is not going to make any difference to the Federal Reserve. And to put the blame and the expectation that there is going to be some sort of profound difference by switching out the chairman of the Federal Reserve is very, I don't know how else to put this, but very naive thinking. That's all there is to it. It doesn't change anything about how the monetary policy is going to be conducted. Now, if you go back and you listen to the Federal Reserve, and they do give many speeches and talks and guidance about what it is that they plan on doing with their votes, I'm talking about the individual FOMC, you can get a better understanding of what it is that's happening with monetary policy. Listening to Jerome Powell is nothing more than the words that the Federal Reserve wants you to hear. But it's not describing the strategy. It's not describing the individual beliefs or understanding about monetary policy. It's delivering a message to you that they want you to hear. Now, I understand that maybe Jerome or Donald Trump wants Jerome Powell to deliver a different message, but ultimately, it's not going to change the way that monetary policy is being conducted. And so I look at what it is that's happened over the last few years, especially considering that Donald Trump appointed Jerome Powell back in 2018. Now, something very interesting was taking place back in 2018 because somebody who was very, very influential at the Federal Reserve is a gentleman named John Williams. Now, John Williams is the New York Fed president, and the New York Fed president has a standing seat on the FOMC. He will forever be a voting member of the FOMC so long as he's president of the New York Fed. So John Williams has more influence over the FOMC than I believe Jerome Powell does. And if you listen to some of the things that John Williams was saying back in 2018, They were in a terrible, terrible position. It was so bad that the speech that he had given, Monetary Policy Strategies for a Low Neutral Interest Rate World, was saying that the monetary policy was suffering from an inflation expectation that was persistently too low rather than too high. This was the problem or a problem that the Federal Reserve was facing back in 2018. Now, part of that speech is John Williams talking about, let me see if I can bring it up here real quick for you guys. Okay. In this speech, Monetary Policy Strategies for a Low Neutral Interest Rate World, it has this to say. Sorry, guys, let me find it here real quick. All right. It says this: why does a low neutral interest rate mean for a monetary policy in anchoring inflation expectation? When a recession hits, the central bank may not be able to reduce interest rates well below their neutral level to stimulate the economy as warranted by the effective lower bound on nominal interest rates. Now we have to think this is at the end of 2018, shortly after Jerome Powell was hired. The shortfall on monetary accommodations will result in less desirable economic outcomes, turning the recession and recovery, or during the recession and recovery. In particularly, inflation would typically undershoot desired target during these episodes. The persistence of below target inflation rates in many advanced economies over the past decades is the testament to this dynamic. It says on, as a result of inherent asymmetry introduced by the lower bound on interest rates, an inflation targeting central bank could experience inflation that is below target. Once we consider the average inflation rate over periods when policy is constrained and those when it is not. With inflation on average below target level, inflation expectations will likely slip below target rate as well. Now, this is it's kind of confusing, but it's also very important to internalize this. The inflation expectation was persistently too low. It was interfering with their monetary policy. They were not able to conduct themselves in the way that they had normally had prior to, actually going all the way back to the 80s, when they had raised interest rates up to 15% or even higher. They would lower rates around 5% in order to stimulate the economy, but they found themselves so close to the lower bound of zero that that was no longer an effective tool. Goes on to say this: this is the important part, right? Because I know a lot of this stuff, people are like, man, what the hell is he trying to say? This is where it gets to the important part, because that downward shift in inflation expectation that was persistently too low rather than too high, this is the problem that they were facing. The downward shift in inflation expectation has a second round effect on real interest rates, the economy, and inflation. Think about that. There's three things that he talked about, right? The inflation expectation has a second round effect on interest rates, the economy, and the real inflation, right? The inflation rate. Talking about inflation expectation and inflation. These are two different things. When policy is constrained by the effective lower bound, the downward shift in inflation expectation raises the real interest rates. This is so important to understand. This is the reason why Jerome Powell was hired, was appointed, was put into position, was buddy-buddy with Trump at the time. See, like almost immediately, soon as Trump appointed Jerome Powell, he almost immediately started saying he wanted to fire him. Now, this is the thing. When you think about when policy is constrained by the effective lower bound, the downward shift in inflation expectation raises the real interest rates, further diminishing the degree of monetary stimulus, making the downturn worse and reducing inflation even more. Now, this is so hard to internalize because there was so much confusion and misunderstanding of what was taking place during this time. People were listening to Donald Trump say that there was no inflation and the Fed should be printing money, and that the Jerome Powell didn't have the guts, didn't have the sense, was too stupid to understand that he should be taking rates into negative territory and be printing money. This is what Donald Trump was saying at the time. There were so many people who were convinced of this at the time, saying that, yeah, Jerome Powell needs to be fired for his actions. And I'm thinking, what is it that he's doing other than talking about the FOMC, talking on behalf of the FOMC, giving his one vote out of 11 other members, one of 12 votes. There is nothing that Jerome Powell does except for speak. That's it. That's the only difference that's between Jerome Powell or any of these other FOMC members. Now, when we think about the downward shift in inflation expectation, raising the real interest rates, this is so difficult to wrap your head around. It's like, why would this be the case? Why would a downward shifting in inflation expectation actually raise the real interest rates? Now, this is something that it's not that hard to understand how it works, but why is it that it was so important at the time? Because let's explain why it is that the inflation expectation or the lowering of inflation expectation raises the real interest rates. See, now, if you're an investor who anticipates on getting a 2% return, let's just make it really simple. You're going to get a 2% return. If you have an inflation expectation of 1%, you will get a 1% return on your investment, what you intend on getting after the inflation. If you lower the inflation expectation to 0, you will raise the real interest rates to 2%. You see what just happened there? You lower the inflation expectation to 0, you will raise the real interest rates. This was the intention of the government actions when it comes to Donald Trump screaming that Jerome Powell needed to be fired. They were attempting to lower the inflation expectation. There's no inflation. The Fed should be printing money. Jerome Powell is stupid. Germany is right. Right? Remember all these stories that he was telling at the time. He didn't actually want them to do it. What he wanted to do was to lower the inflation expectation. And it totally worked. It totally worked for the Federal Reserve, and it totally worked for the government. They lowered the inflation expectation, and it began to raise the real interest rates. Now, let's look at some more of what it says in there. When the policy is constrained by the effective lower bound, the downward shift in inflation expectation raises the real interest rates, further diminishing the degree of monetary stimulus, making the downturn worse and reducing inflation even more. So now, at the time, right, if you think about it, let's read this in reverse for just a minute, because it might make a little bit more sense at the time of what was taking place, okay? Because if we read this in reverse, it's going to start making it a little bit more clear, right? So if the downward shift in inflation expectation raises the real interest rates, further diminishing the degree of monetary stimulus. Well, what if you had an inflation expectation that was higher? All right. Let's say that it was, instead of a downward shift in inflation expectation, it was an upward shift in inflation expectation, which lowered the real interest rates, further increasing the degree of monetary stimulus. You see, if you read this backwards from what it is, because like they said in here, right, if you lower the inflation expectation, it raises the real interest rates, further diminishing the degree of monetary stimulus. But if you think about it from the opposite side of that, if you raise the inflation expectation, if you have an increasing inflation expectation, it will lower the real interest rates, further diminishing the degree of monetary stimulus, or further increasing the degree of monetary stimulus. See, this is really what was taking place at the time, is that the Federal Reserve was trying to raise rates. They had a Fed funds rate up around 2.5%. They couldn't go any further with it. Everybody was flipping out. Markets were not doing well. It was obvious that they were going to drive it into a recession. It was on its way, and the Federal Reserve was sitting at 2.5% on the Fed funds rate. Nowhere near enough room to stimulate the economy if they went into a downturn. 2.5% to zero wouldn't do it. They had a problem. They couldn't raise the interest rates any further. Donald Trump came out and says, no problem, boys. I got your back. Watch this. There's no inflation. The Fed should be printing money. The Germany is doing right. All of a sudden, the inflation expectation is starting to fall. People are like, yeah, fire Jerome Powell. He doesn't know what he's doing. They should be taking lower rates. They should be printing money, lowering that inflation expectation and raising the real interest rates. See, this is really how the Fed and the government work together. People don't think that they're working together. And even I tell people, it's just like the Federal Reserve is not part of the government. They are not working for the government. They are not doing things on the government's behalf. They are working independently. But at times when they need each other, when they need the money printer to go off so that the government can go into massive stimulus spending, or if they need to raise the interest rates, they can mess with the inflation expectation by having the government come out and have particular words that will then put the expectation within the people in the direction in which that they want. And at the time, they wanted inflation expectation to be persistently too low, or not persistent, they had it persistently too low, but they used that inflation expectation to their advantage so that they could raise the real interest rates and continue with their monetary policy. That's really how this thing goes down. When I hear again Donald Trump coming out saying he wants to fire Jerome Powell, I'm like, okay, so what's you guys' plans? Because you're obviously working together on this, right? I mean, that's like, I seen it last time, so let's see what's going to happen this time, even though nobody is going to agree with that, and they're all going to start taking on this narrative and this position that they need to fire Jerome Powell, but then they have no idea why it is that they would need to fire him, because really, Jerome Powell is not a decision maker other than his one vote. So again, like when I hear Donald Trump saying he's a loser, he's stupid, he doesn't understand what he is doing, and I'm thinking, what the hell are you talking about, man? I mean, you don't like his one vote? Is that what you don't like? Because you can change them around, change the one vote, but you got 11 other people, 5 alternates and two advisors who are still going to be having the same strategy, the same thoughts, the same ideas, the same votes, right? None of it changes. Not a single thing will change when you fire Jerome Powell. Nothing, right? Except for his one vote. And the person who is telling you what it is that the Federal Reserve is trying to communicate out there to the people, that will change too. But the words that are used, the strategies behind it, the expectations coming from the FOMC will not change if you remove Jerome Powell. If you put anybody else in there, it'll be the exact same outcome, no matter what. So what it is that they are trying to communicate out there to the public, especially with, Donald Trump already saying that he's going to fire or wants to fire Jerome Powell, it makes me wonder, what is it that they are trying to get the people to believe? Because there is no change that's going to come from the FOMC by doing that. Okay. All right. We got 239 people up in here with 66 likes. Let's get some questions and comments going through here. I'm going to scroll back a little ways. We got Axel saying, stay poor and remain a peasant. At all-nighter, huh? You guys arguing? Okay. Keep flaunting your idiocy. Oh, well, that was a great way to start this. Okay, let's find somebody else here. You guys keep going at it, all right? All right, Jerome Powell is crushing. I wonder what he does for fun. Wears a nice Rolex. Submariner? This is how they officially retire. Yeah, it is, right? I will flaunt my trading. You guys go ahead and keep going. All right, can't wait for your take on this meeting. Okay, let's move on. You guys are just going fighting. Okay. Something bigger than you are, little UE. I don't know. All right. What is going on? Andrea crying? All right. Well, okay, not sure what history you're reading and how it relates to firing Powell. What history am I reading? Well, I'm not reading history. This has just happened just recently, so it's almost present time, right? I mean, in the grand scheme of things, just a few years ago is really not ancient history. This isn't something that I am like making up. This is coming directly from the FOMC. This is Monetary Policy Strategies for a Low Neutral Interest Rate World, given by John Williams, the New York Fed president. And this is a Fed speech that I am referring to. So, yeah, I don't know what it is that you think. But obviously, people make up their own mind, make up their. Actually, you know what it is that since they don't really know, they just assume, and they assume their assumptions are accurate, right? That's really what's going on out there. See, I don't necessarily assume it when I have a speech right here that I'm reading from. I got many speeches that I read from. This is the people who are making up monetary policy. I'm not reading from somebody who isn't making monetary policy, but criticizing monetary policy. See, those people don't know what the hell is going on. They're making up their own theories and ideas about what it is that they think that the monetary policy should be. I'm reading directly from the people who are making the monetary policy. Right? Like, this is their words. This isn't me making stuff up or assuming or, believing that it's all lies. Right? Like a lot of people do. Now, I'm not saying they ain't lying. What I'm saying is like they have a strategy that they have clearly communicated through these speeches that isn't clearly communicated anywhere else, especially not on mainstream media, and especially not from the president. Like, not even close. Like that, not a single president is coming out talking about how monetary policy is being conducted, and they do not talk about it in any kind of accurate form. Like the president doesn't talk about monetary policy. Not that I've ever heard. They talk fiscal policy, which is different, right? Fiscal policy and monetary policy are not the same thing. All right, well, I wish we didn't have to talk about this subject at all. The Federal Reserve promised no more crashes when they were formed in 1913. Yeah, Rooster Cogburn, I mean, I don't know if they could ever promise that there would never be a crash. I think what it came down to is that they were promising to expand the money supply during times when the economy was heating up so that the currency supply that was limited could be expanded to continue to operate in a heated economy. Because if you think about it, like if you have a limited currency out there, like gold or silver, and you have an economy that is operating at a fairly high clip, it's a hot economy, people are going to be doing a lot of transactions. And what ends up happening if you're doing a lot of transactions is you want to be a producer saver. Well, if you start saving the currency, what you are doing is you are denying everybody else the ability to use that currency to do transactions with. This is what the Federal Reserve had recognized, and that the big bankers, really, it wasn't the Federal Reserve, it was the big money guys like the JP Morgan people, the real JP Morgan. These type of people who are like, hey, we're tired of bailing out this country. We need to figure out a way to keep this from happening. And so they came up with this Federal Reserve System. Now, I don't think it's a good system. Like, I'm not saying that. I'm not trying to like advocate saying, hey, they had a great idea or something of that nature. But what they were trying to do is to create a currency so that when the situation came up in which that the depletion of money was denying everybody the ability to do transactions, they could expand this currency out there to allow the business cycle to continue to operate. And this is where I think a lot of people get confused about it, especially when they think about the gold standard and how the gold standard was this awesome standard that kept prices very stable. But what they don't seem to understand is that there was also massive depressions that came from that. Business cycles would slow down. People would not be able to do work. They were going hungry. There was massive depressions and horribleness that came from the gold standard. It was a cycle, right? It happened. It was business cycle. Now, people who understood it could prepare for it and say, hey, man, during the downtimes, I'm going to have some money saved up or be able to, figure out a way to get through this. But most people had no clue. And there would be these horrible long bread lines, and everybody's sitting on mass unemployment while the money was being redistributed back out there again to start the whole cycle over. Again, right? How do you deal with that? They created this Federal Reserve System, started issuing out Federal Reserve notes in order to expand the currency supply and to smooth out those business cycles. What do we end up with? Debt cycles. And now, because there's an ever-increasing amounts of money that pour into the system, new money comes into the system, you have a separation between the rich and the poor. So now we have massive inequality to deal with alongside the idea that they need to figure out how to keep this operation going. So at some point, yeah, there will be a massive crash, but it's going to be pain and misery for everybody. I don't see anybody being able to survive the outcome of a currency collapse here in the United States. It will be incredibly devastating for all. Now, those who happen to hoard up on gold and silver and maybe Bitcoin to a lesser extent might have a position in which that they can take advantage of during that time. But for the most part, what you're going to find is everybody else in the nation are going to be suffering in misery and poverty. So it's better to look at the Federal Reserve almost as a neutral. Like, use it to your own advantage for what it is that you know about the monetary policy and how the economy works. Know that there is going to be ever increasing amounts of inequality and money printing and debt issuance. Know that you have to position yourself in a way that to be a property owner or a capitalist, and how it is that you can borrow that money to buy asset or cash flowing assets, because this is what the rich elite are doing. This is how they're separating themselves from everybody else. Everybody's who's sitting there going, "No, man, my job should be enough." Right? When they say that to, I don't know, whatever, their elected officials, my job should be enough, right? What they are doing is they are putting the expectation out there on the government to say, "Hey, man, I'm not responsible for myself. I need you to do something with this economy that then says what it is that I am doing is going to be enough. It's going to be sufficient, because I can't seem to do it on my own, so I need you to do it." Now, if you take the information that you are receiving, you internalize it for yourself, you say, okay, I need to figure out how it is that I can position myself, considering what it is that's going on out there, in order to be the person who is acquiring those rental properties, who's acquiring the dividend-paying stocks, who's acquiring businesses, who's acquiring the position in which that I need in order to have those, to have that thing, that way of life that I truly want in this world. Because most people are not going to do that. They are going to show up every day, 9 to 5, and then wonder why it is that they are failing, or wonder why it is that they are suffering, or can't seem to get ahead. And then they look to the politics of it and say, please tell me, what is it that I'm doing wrong? Right? Please, I have an expectation that's outside of me that says you need to change something about the environment to make what it is that I'm doing accurate, to make it good, to make it useful, to make it profitable. But what I am doing right now doesn't seem to be doing it, and it's their fault. Right? I mean, that's ultimately what people are saying. So understanding that the Federal Reserve should be just considered a neutral. They are a currency expanding central bank debt issuer, whatever you want to call it. Yeah, okay, that's true. How do we deal with that so that we can use it to our advantage? Because that's really what we should be doing with the information. Not sitting there wondering what it is that the government can do to make our lives that much better, you know? The camera just slowly slips off the shelf here. The rest were dislikes. Whatever. All right, 40 likes. There's like 50 people here in the chat alone. Oh, we got 89 likes. All right. Should fired him a long time ago. See, Michigan poke? Why? What difference would it make? What difference would it make if they fired Jerome Powell? Nothing. Like, even the statement that you just made, they should have fired him a long time ago. Why? What difference? I mean, are you going to change the votes of 11 other people by firing Jerome Powell? No. There's going to be absolutely no change. And so by saying they should fire Jerome Powell, what you are doing is you're putting an expectation on an external that doesn't make any difference to you. Right? Oh, no, my life would be so much better if they would just fire Jerome Powell. What? Are you sure? Because there's no change that's going to happen. See, everything is about the meaning you give it anyway. right? This is what blows me away. So I'm sitting there like, I got Facebook just like a lot of people do, right? And I don't really hang out on Facebook much. Most of it is just drama and just horse crap. Like, nobody really needs to be paying attention to that stuff. And I'm like, I mean, you guys know I live up here in the Pacific Northwest, right? This is like liberal central up here. And the people are losing their mind. Like some of the comments and statements that I see scrolling across my Facebook page are just absolutely just mental health deterioration, lost their mind crazy. Like literally lost their mind. Like I was just like, they were setting up Zoom meetings so that people could communicate on with each other about how deteriorated their life is now because of this change in the election and the presidents. And I'm thinking nothing's changed. Nothing is different today than it was yesterday, right? There is no change to it except the way that you are giving meaning to it. And the meaning that you are giving it to it is my life is over. It sucks. I can't make it. Okay? And it's all because they voted for him. And it's like nothing has changed. What you were doing yesterday is no different from what you can do today. But yet somehow, overnight, the whole meaning of your world has come undone. Same thing with the people who like are totally down for Trump, right? Same thing. All of a sudden, their whole world is going to get so much better all of a sudden because there's the new person who's going to be up there in office. And I'm thinking, what is any different about today that you are conducting yourself in that is any different from what you were doing yesterday other than the meaning that you were giving this world? That's it, man. They look at this like, I don't give it any meaning. My world didn't change. They vote like, all of a sudden Trump is going to be president. They voted him in. Everything's cool. My world didn't change. Yesterday, today, the day before, the next day, none of it changed. What I'm doing, what I'm thinking, what I'm planning, everything, nothing changed for me. The meaning that I gave it was very little, very small. Is there going to be changes coming to the economy? Sure. I'll accept those changes as they come and I'll conduct myself in accordance to those changes because everything constantly changes. Nothing stays the same, ever. And the people who are anticipating that it's going to stay the same are the ones who are going to suffer in misery because that's the meaning that they give their life. This needs to stay the same or else my world comes undone. Okay, right? You will suffer the consequences from that. All right. Cody, two, what does it say? $2. Can you gift me a membership? Oh, thanks for the membership gift. All right, you guys are gifting up. Thank you so much, man. That is so awesome that you guys are doing the whole gifting of memberships to each other, and I really appreciate that. We have close to, I don't know, just under 700 people right now who are members to the channel. And I tell you, I have never found a community of people who are so of the mind to figure this thing out for themselves like we are here on this channel. Like most of the other economists, most of the other channels out there are trying to convince you of a particular way of thinking. And although I tried to communicate what it is that I'm thinking out there, ultimately my message that I've been trying to deliver out there to people is figure this stuff out for yourself because nobody knows the position that you're in. Nobody knows what business you want to start, what investments you need, what retirement plan you have going, what educations that you need because you're young, whatever. Like there is such a huge realm of possibilities out there for each and every single person that there is no way that an individual on a YouTube channel can communicate what it is that you need to do. It's not possible unless you happen to be exactly in line with what it is that that person on that channel is doing. Right? Are you working at a lumberyard, have a YouTube channel, doing a side hustle, trying to figure out how it is that you're going to make it through? Well, then maybe, you might just be like me and you can do exactly what I'm doing. But most people are probably not just like me. A lot of people are not having to raise kids, right? A lot of people are not trying to figure out how it is that they are going to figure a retirement plan considering they have absolutely nothing going for themselves by the time they were 40 years old. Most people aren't, well, a lot of people might be, but a lot of people who are not sitting in those type of positions. They can't do the things that I'm doing, right? They have to do something that's totally different. And that's where this channel really comes into play, is that we are trying to figure this thing out for ourselves, because each and every single one of us is going to be making decisions that are different from everybody else. And so as we communicate what it is that's happening within the economy, within monetary policy, we are starting to learn what it is that we can do for ourselves as an individual to get our way through this world. And that's what this whole channel is all about. Let's go find that super chat. Where's that thing at? Oh, there it is. $2 garage, $5. Thank you so much. So instead of moaning and voting, act like the rich and get those gains econ Darwinism. That's, yes, this is exactly it, man. I mean, I've just come to the conclusion that there is nothing that we can do to try and give us the ability that the hardworking individual going 9 to 5 is going to have the ability to make it in this world. It just isn't going to happen like that. We have to, you know what? Hold on, guys. What are we missing here? We're missing the dice. There we go. Put some dice up there. Got these dice from All Nighter. And so we have to figure this thing out for ourselves. And most people who are thinking like their 9 to 5 job are going to make it are going to end up suffering the consequences from that. But the individuals who realize, man, I need to become the property owner or the capitalist or figure that part out, they're the ones who are going to be able to actually perform within this economy. Everybody else is going to suffer, right? It's because we're not going to bring manufacturing back in any kind of profound way. It just isn't going to happen. Right? In order to do it, we would have to lower our standard of living, and nobody wants to lower their standard of living. So that's not going to take place. But what is going to take place is the opportunity to go out there and earn a living in a way that has not ever been available to people in the past. I mean, this channel is a testament to that for me. I've seen plenty of people out there who are making money doing side hustles online, doing sales or doing all kinds of stuff. Like, I mean, I can't even, some of this stuff, it blows me away on how easy it is for them to make money just going out there and literally just messing around on their computer, doing sales or doing affiliates or whatever it is that's going on out there. There's so much room for possibilities that there's no reason why other people can't be putting their time and effort and energy into these things in order to find the ability to get ahead. It's not like it's hard. It takes time. It has to be built just like everything else. Like, you're not going to build a house in a single day. Every stud has to be put into place. You have to build each wall. You have to put every piece together until you have finally built that house together. Or put the entire thing together. And what's funny about it is that somebody who doesn't know how to build a house will look at the house and say, wow, this is so complicated. This is so much. There's so many pieces here. There's no way that I could ever figure out how to build this house. And then you talk to a carpenter and say, well, it's just one piece at a time. You just got to put the pieces into place. You got to be accurate. You got to make your cuts right. You got to have know kind of where the things go. But once you learn the system, it's just the same thing. It's just either bigger or smaller, a little bit of different design, but it's always, essentially, it's the same thing. And you don't look at Old Nighter and I, if we were to look at a building, we don't look about how complicated it is. We think about all the different little pieces that put it all together and how they constructed it and the architecture of it and the skill in which that it went together. But, we don't look at it as saying, man, this is so complicated. We can't get this thing done. That's the same thing with economics. It's the same thing with making money. It's the same thing with anything out there. It doesn't matter what it is. I mean, if you're trying to make money or trying to make connections with people or trying to start a business or whatever it is that you're doing, it doesn't matter. It's all the same thing. It's a matter of piecing this together brick by brick. There's going to be times in which you fail. You go out there to try to make the sale totally falls through, fell right on your face, man. You have no idea what the hell you were doing. But you get out there and you said hello and you tried to sell your product and they turned you down. But the next time, you're going to have a little bit more skill on how it is that you're going to conduct yourself. And then pretty soon, you're going to start doing sales. And the more you do it, the more you realize, man, I'm actually good at doing sales. Why? Because you've done it for thousands of times, and you just kept going at it and just kept doing it over and over and over again until finally you just figured out how to use the words properly in order to get your product information out there, convince the people that they are confident in what it is that you have for sale and what it is that you are going to provide for them and that usefulness that comes from it. And then everybody just seems to be just in line with it, and it just works like as if it was magic. Right? And it's the same thing for everything out there. It doesn't matter if you're talking investments or whatever, you know. All right. The oil is Mother Gaia's lifeline. You can pay Uncle Sam with your overtime. I want class action lawsuits against the Fed since they are a private entity. Well, what are you going to get from them? If Trump decides to fire Powell, can't he just nominate someone he likes? He liked Jerome Powell. He nominated Jerome Powell. Then when he gets mad at them and fires them, then does it again and again until the current FOMC members are new. No, because all you would end up doing is just replacing the chairman. The rest of the FOMC would still be there. Like, you're not going to be able to replace each member of the FOMC in that fashion. Like, I don't know, maybe I didn't figure out a way to do it, but that's not the way it's done, and I doubt that's what's going to happen. All right. You know, it's better. It's. I don't really live in the world of what ifs. Like, what if this? What if that? I mean, like, you can think of 400 different scenarios, and I guarantee you, not a single one of them is going to end up being the way it ends up, right? It's just like, you know, just like anything out there. If you hold a bunch of anxiety about the future, and you're sitting there and you're running through your mind, man, all the different possible scenarios, and man, if it goes down like this and that, and and you're thinking about it, you will end up screwing things up. What you have to do is be in the moment. Just say, if you're doing the sale, if you are so hung up on the sale, it's got to get done. I got to get the sale. I got to get it no matter what. They got to buy my product, right? I almost guarantee you that you're not going to sell it, right? But if you're in the moment, you're like, hey, I got a good product here. I know it's a good product. I can know how to talk about this product. And when I present this product to the people out there, they're going to love this product because of how much I believe in this product. And when I present this product, they see how much I believe in this product. And once they see that this product is going to be useful to them, they're just going to be begging to give me money because that's how good I am at selling this product, because that's how much I truly believe in it. See, that's the position. Not they got to buy it, they got to buy it. It is, I know that I'm doing this right. I know what I have. I know this is the way it's going to go down. Those people might not buy it, but the people right behind them will, or if not them, the people behind them will. Right? And I'm not going to be concerned about whether or not they buy it or not. What I'm going to be concerned about is whether or not that I'm presenting the product in an authentic manner that I know is going to be useful to the people. You take that sort of energy towards something, and it doesn't matter what it is, you're going to find that you're going to be far more successful than it's got to happen. If it's got to happen, then it probably won't. And in fact, the moment that you let it go, you are going to find that it actually starts flowing back towards you in ways that you didn't even know was going to happen. You're looking at it as like, man, I didn't expect it to go down like that, right? All of a sudden, you're just finding that all the world of abundance is just floating around you because you were living in the moment. It wasn't because you were anticipating it or pushing for it. You were just saying, no, man, I'm just living my life. I'm doing this the best that I can. I know that I'm being useful. I know that I'm chasing the excellence. When you live in that sort of mindset, things just become, they just get presented to you. Like, here you go. There it is. It's like, it's almost as if it was just given to you. And that's really where I think a lot of people end up missing it, especially in just everyday life. Like, they just conduct themselves in a way that says, man, the whole world is after me, or all these things need to change, and I have all these external problems out there, and then they wonder why it is that their internal world sucks. Right? It's because they're not dealing with it from the internal side, saying, man, I got to live in the moment. I got to be present. I got to be here, not there, not mind out there somewhere thinking about other things. I'm thinking about this. I'm thinking about doing this right now, right here, being here with you, right? Not anything else. Once you start doing that, everything just starts becoming easy. All right. Hey, we got Mr. Balloon Pimp up in here. Right on. Hey, there he is. Thank you for thank you, Trash Can Man. Right on, Mr. Balloon Pimp. I like to see you up in here, man. All right, Simon, going to buy silver more under Trump while he lowers everything because later silver will once again go up after Trump leaves office in 4 years. Okay, well, this is your what if, right? I mean, this is your what if. What if Trump puts it in a situation in which silver gets cheaper? I mean, to me, I don't look towards any expectations like that. If silver goes down, I buy some. If silver goes up, I'll probably buy some anyway because I'm a dollar cost average. I do dollar cost average. And to me, that's not my expectations. Trump doesn't do anything for me when it comes to my investments. I can care less. I literally can care less who's in office. That doesn't have any difference to me on what it is that I am doing with my investments because my investments are much deeper rooted than most of that stuff out there. They can go ahead and conduct themselves any way they want. I conduct myself the way I want. I believe in what it is that I have chosen to put my money towards. And if I'm right or wrong, we'll find out at the end of it. But I don't base my decisions off of who's in office up there. I know a lot of other people will. And the thing is that by giving it that meaning, they will have an outcome from it. And they'll be like, no, look, man, I can prove it to you right here. This is the outcome because of this administration change. Yeah, that's the meaning that you gave it. And you experienced that meaning change because that's what was in your head. Right? Like, I mean, it's just like people's world's coming undone right now. They have lost their mind because there's a new president coming in months from now. But now, today, their whole world is undone. It's nothing changed except for the meaning that they've given it. All right. Learn financial mathematics and let politicians come and go. Well, Germans invented synthetic oil in the 40s. Oh, that's interesting. All right. I'm all at once cost averager. I mean, like, I'm all in, but I dollar cost averaged in. Hey, Simon, how will deporting 20, like, I'm done. I'm not going to read that, but and the reason why I'm not going to read it is because you got me a what if, man. What if this happened, right? All right. Okay. Online is one way. There's others. Absolutely. When will the hats be in stock? I don't know. Like Teespring, I got to go back and kind of do some research in there. Like, really, I had a friend set me up with all the Teespring stuff and designing all the shirts and everything. And unfortunately, she moved away from the area and kind of started off on, doing some school and doing her own thing. And we kind of lost touch. So I don't really have anybody helping me out with my channel like I once did. So I got to go back into Teespring and do some design works and, figure out what's going on in there. Simon, I get overthinking sometimes. However, I don't think I am here. Why can't the entire FOMC cycle through? Is the FOMC president selected from the FOMC members and alternates? Can you explain? Actually, I will do that in another video because I would probably like to bring up some stuff about it and show how these FOMC members get into their positions and how long they end up being there. A lot of these FOMC members, the position that they had held before they got in there is ultimately I'm not saying all of them, but a lot of them are positions from the big banking financial organizations and stuff like that. So ultimately, like, they're basically like regulating and governing and supervising themselves. I mean, there's, like, you think about it, when you got members of the big banks who end up as the Treasury Secretary or end up as the chairman of the Federal Reserve, these people, they're all part of the club, right? I mean, this is like, just like George Collins is saying, it's a big club and you're not in it. That's pretty apparent, right? I mean, it's obvious that it's out there. but it's also not as like, how do I, because it is conspiratorial in a way, and I don't want to like, degrade the idea of it being a conspiracy, because there is a lot of truth within that. But the way that it is conducted is a hell of a lot more business like than I think people give it credit for, right? Like, it's very systematic in which the operation goes. So as much as like, a lot of people would like to be like, oh no, man, look at this. They got a master plan to keep everybody down and screw everybody over and make sure that nobody actually succeeds in their life. And that's the way they do it, is because the rich are powerful and they want to make sure that poor stay poor. And then I look and I say, well, there's poor people all the time who have totally found mass fortune. So no, that's not true, right? It's true for a lot of people who can't figure out their way, but it's not true in the sense that they are trying to keep people down, because people have the opportunity to rise above everything else out there starting from scratch. And it happens every day. So as much as like, yeah, there's a lot of issues as far as the conspiracy mind would go within this organization, it's not what a lot of people seem to think it is, in which that the rich people are trying to keep the poor people down, when I see poor people every day totally excelling. Right? And see, I like this one. Alex Jones for press secretary, carry it on. I would not want Alex Jones to be delivering any kind of message to me. I'm sorry. I don't want it. I listen to Alex Jones quite a bit, and he will take a small piece of information and blow it way out of proportion so he could get views and ratings. You know how many times I listened to Alex Jones and believed that the government was about ready to kick my door in? Like, I believed that. Like, I did. There was a time in my life that I was totally prepared for a New World Order takeover. In my mind, I was going to have to fight. In my mind, I knew that there was going to be massive, like, military state martial law type of events. All this stuff was going to start coming down and was going to rule my world. And I lived in accordance to that. And I was very poor, very broke, very depressed, and losing everything I had. That is not the space that I want to be in. Right? What I want to be in is the space of chasing excellence, because I can see that there is plenty of excellence to chase. Now, if you're living in a world that says the New World Order is coming down, there's martial law, there's lack of, they're going to take all your freedoms from you, then you're probably going to find a view that is exactly like that. And your world will be in very much in line with that view. So no, I like Alex Jones. I think he's a great dude. I listened to him a lot. He had great information. He had a hell of a lot of good guests on his show, but he was very difficult to try and get any kind of real information from. Alex Jones presenting serious info to the media. I couldn't keep from laughing. No way. Yeah, and that was funny. It's like occasionally you would find Alex Jones being like on Fox News or on, one of these others, because he had interviewed somebody that nobody had access to. Like, he was able to communicate and talk with such a grand group of people from all over. There was some people who was like, man, how were you able to do that? And so they actually interviewed Alex Jones to get that information from him. You sound frustrated. I'm not frustrated, not by any means. Thomas Crown, thank you so much for the $5. Hey Simon, I have a part-time HVAC business and just landed one of my biggest jobs. I let go of any expectations I had, and the universe delivered. Dang, right there, Thomas. See, this is exactly it, man. You're in your moment, right? Here you have the job, you have the business, you presented itself out there. You're like, man, I can do this work. I know what it is that I have out there that I can bring for value to this world. And the world said, hey, man, yes, you bring us that value and you'll be rewarded for it. And it's just like that. It's as simple as that, right? If you had I got to get this job, if that was in your mind when you went to go find that job, or when those people were asking you to bid it out and you were like, man, I got to get it. I got to get it. I got to get this thing. I got it. You probably wouldn't have gotten it. But you're like, hey, I'm going to present a fair bid. I'm going to, do it in the way that I know I best understand this. And I'm going to deliver this in a message that is, hopefully useful and friendly and business-like so that we can all get along, and bang, you get it, right? I mean, it's not that hard. You just live in the moment. All right. Nicholas, thank you for the $4.99. What are your top 3, 5 investments for a Trump administration? I don't have one for a Trump administration, so I couldn't answer that question. Whether it was Donald Trump or Biden or Harris or anybody else in there, it doesn't change the way that I'm going to conduct myself when it comes to my investments. My investments have been spanning these administrations. I just don't care. I literally don't care, who is in office right now. If things were to change in the environment that I see, then I would conduct myself differently, but I don't see the change in which that I would need to see in order to change the way that I'm conducting myself. So I buy gold and silver. Right? That's my number one. It's my savings account. That's what I started off in, and that's a position that I will always take. I don't care who is in office. Bitcoin is my secondary. I buy $50 worth of Bitcoin every single time I get paid. Sometimes it's twice a month. Sometimes it might be 4 times a month, right? So I buy Bitcoin all the time. I have a small stock portfolio in which that the number one position inside of that stock portfolio happens to be the crypto bank Coinbase, right? Again, completely by accident. I didn't mean for cryptocurrency to be my number one biggest position inside of like all the things that I had purchased. Well, maybe the real estate's the number one biggest one, but cryptocurrency happens to be the biggest position. And I didn't mean for that to happen. It just moved up so dramatically high. It's just taken over as being the biggest position inside of my portfolio. So between Bitcoin and the altcoins I have and the Coinbase stock, that probably represents better than 70% of my entire everything that I have as far as savings and stock portfolio is literally tied up in those 2 positions, right? And I didn't mean for that to be. It just grew to that. Now, when I think about the stocks that I have total stock market ETF, can care less who's president, don't matter, right? I have the Russell 1000 growth stocks. Again, I'm not really anticipating the difference in that between the presidents or not. That doesn't mean anything to me. I buy Altria, which is it was Anheuser-Busch and Marlboro cigarettes. I bought it because of, I know a little bit about addiction, and that's kind of like the sin stock. It's more about Marlboro cigarettes now than anything, but they have a few other products that they buy into, and all of it is all about based around addiction. So again, I'm not trying to feed into the idea that we should, profit off of the weak, addicted minded or something like that. But hell, I see people buying cigarettes every single day. Well, if they're going to continue to buy them, then I'm going to continue to profit off of it. So yeah, I buy into Altria. I also buy ExxonMobil. Right? Now, when I think about these positions that I have purchased into, I don't care. Like whether Trump's in office or Biden's office or Harrison's is in office, none of that made any difference to me. None. Like tomorrow, next week, next month, next year, unless something changes in the way that I'm viewing the external out there, the way that I'm viewing the world, I don't see any reasons why I'm going to change these positions. I might add more to them, but I think these positions are just fine for what it is that I'm expecting out of it. And I have very little external expectations of them doing anything other than what it is that they are doing, right? Which is, performing like the stocks do. So, I mean, it's just like, I don't mean to dance around your question, but I just don't have any expectation of Trump doing anything that I would need to have to invest in because he's in office or opposed to them being in office. That doesn't make any difference. I mean, there is stocks out there that you could take that position with. I don't. I don't look at it in that world. I don't have that view of the world. All right, 265 people with 129 likes. Go continue to hit that like button, everybody. Be out here for probably another, I don't know, half hour or so. Freddie's at basketball again, so he's in there shooting hoops. All right. That's the thing not going to change. That's why things not going to change. Why? Everything changes. You know that, right? Everything changes. Nothing stays the same. It never will. Trump's economic plan entirely revolves around tariffs. Tariffs are not going to work. Too little, too late. Whatever. We'll see what happens. And we'll see to like what effect. I mean, is it threats? Like I see people who are already planning. Like I was reading an article about, I don't know, train, I don't know, like train distribution or something like that. I was just I was just kind of just perusing the article real quick, so I didn't get like a lot of the detailed information in it. But ultimately, they have this high expectation that there is going to be this resurgence of manufacturing coming back to the United States, and they're going to be having all this train delivery coming from it, like rail delivery, on account of this whole big giant manufacturing boom that's going to come back to the United States. And I guess it's based on the idea of what it is that Trump is going to do once he gets into office. Now, I think about that and I'm like, wow, that sounds very eerily similar to the CHIPS Act. Right? Remember, we were going to have a whole bunch of manufacturing come back to the United States, right? All the chip manufacturing, all this stuff, big time, where the hell is it? Didn't happen, right? I mean, some of it happened, but most of these companies couldn't meet the government's criteria, and so they didn't use any of that money. It didn't go anywhere. It didn't do anything. It was a big, giant, fat, like promise, empty promise, essentially. I don't know what the point of it was, other than maybe a big, giant pacifier for the people to say, "Oh man, we got the government working on this. We're gonna do so good. We're gonna have all these jobs. We're gonna manufacture. Isn't everybody happy? We're all happy with this idea." Right? But it didn't do anything. Not anything real. I mean, look out there. I mean, is it, are you finding any significance change in the economy out there? Right? From the CHIPS Act? I mean, maybe a little bit, maybe for an individual out there who says, no, man, look, they built this factory right here for me. Right? Well, that's cool, but the rest of the world and here in the economy or in the United States isn't really experiencing any kind of real benefit from that. uh I grow my own tobacco now. Can you do that? I guess you can probably grow your own, huh? Because isn't like growing tobacco illegal, kind of like growing weed? Like, isn't that why they set up the tobacco, uh, ATF, alcohol, tobacco, and firearms? It was just like because they didn't want people growing their own tobacco because that would push against the big money. Tobacco seed is so small it gives so much cancer stick. Uh-huh. Okay. Yeah, I might reread the article to understand why the journalist said that. What are you guys talking about? Did I hear credible threat? What are you guys talking about? Man, I love some of the conversations you guys have in the comments, but I know, like, because I'm not reading through it all, I don't understand what you guys are talking about. All right. Andrea, yeah, I might read. Oh, we already read that one. Okay. I'd like to trade with small amount of money, something you don't mind losing unless you're Ross Cameron. Look up Ross Cameron. Good night, all. Good night, Mr. Balloon Pimp. All right. Look it up. I almost bought Intel stock until I really looked into it. After that, I canceled the contract. Right? And this is it's so easy to fall into it. It's so easy to fall into the idea that, man, they are in charge of everything and they're going to make our world so much different and, all that. Like, you put that level of expectation on them and then they're going to use it to their advantage. Right? That's the easy way to control people to have their expectations relying on you. And if they can do that, if they can do that through the media, through whatever, and they have the people's expectation then relying on them, they got control. They got control of it. Now, if the government had the expectation on the people, they needed the people to, like, if we truly held the government under our thumb and we held them accountable, then they would be looking to us for that approval, right? They would have expectations from us. We wouldn't have expectations from them. And then if that was the case, we would not find that we would be in this environment. We would not have a lot of the issues that we are experiencing right now. See, there was a time in which that this is the way that the people conducted themselves. They didn't appreciate government. They didn't even like government. In fact, they didn't even want government. And when they did establish it, the forefathers were like, okay, listen, we came really close. This is about as close as we can get to having a government while being just this side of anarchy. Right? So here you go. Go ahead and try and hold on to this thing, right? Because this is about as limited as we can make it, at least from their ideas of what it is and what the way that they were conducting themselves at the time. And so by knowing that back then that the people really didn't even want government and weren't going to really like be approving of it. Oh, here's Freddie. Come on in, bud. So give me 1 second here and I'll just finish up this live stream and then we'll head home. But, by the people not really approving of government at the time and didn't appreciate it and didn't even really want government going on, it's amazing on how much change has happened since the establishment of the United States and the Constitution. Right? The people now no longer have the idea of what it is to be a constitutional republic. What they have is some sort of expectation of government of being involved in their life, which is not something that the forefathers wanted. It's completely different. We don't live a life in which that they had tried to set this nation up with. So instead, now we have to suffer with the consequences of the idea that we have put so much reliance on the government when it never should have happened in the first place. So anyway, I'm going to go. Freddie's done with basketball practice. We're going to head home. I hope you guys enjoyed the live stream. We'll probably do some more again this weekend. Not sure on what topic, but we'll figure it out then. Uneducated Economist, thank you guys for watching. We got 259 people with 151 likes, $14.99 in Super Chat because you guys are always so supportive of the channel. Be sure and follow some of the links down in the description. Cantillon essay and all that other stuff is available for you guys. You guys hear me talk about that all the time. Teespring available. Go buy a t-shirt. Support the Uneducated Economist the best you can. Thank you very much for that. The super chats and everything that you do for the channel Uneducated Economist. You guys let me know.